It's important to note that the congressional standard for obstruction of justice is sometimes lower than the courts. Neither Bill Clinton nor Richard Nixon, for example, ever faced criminal charges for obstruction of justice. But, Tony, they did both face impeachment for it.
A great piece and a fascinating interview with the lawyer Robert Bennett. But let's talk about Comey for a second here. We know that Comey declined the Senate Intelligence Committee's offer to testify on Tuesday. Is there a sense yet if and when Comey may share his side of the story?
Well, there isn't a hard and fast date. There was a sense that perhaps it would be best, at least on his part, to let things die down a little bit and take a step back before coming in to meet with the Senate Intelligence Committee. Right now, obviously, tempers are flaring on Capitol Hill over the president's decision to fire Comey. If he were to come in next week, it would be a bit of a circus because a lot of people still have a lot of unanswered questions about the way that this termination went down. So the decision on his part was to take a little time. He just left his job this week. There will be plenty of time to come in and brief the Senate Intelligence Committee members in the future.
Perhaps we'll get some pictures of him wakeboarding a la President Obama. Now, we also know that the Senate Intelligence Committee issued a subpoena to Michael Flynn this week. What are the committee's priorities beyond that going forward after having met with the Deputy Attorney General?
Well, they're sort of in document collection mode right now. That's part of the reason that they issued that subpoena to Michael Flynn. They had asked for those documents last month, and they haven't characterized what the documents are that they want, but he declined to produce them via his lawyers, and so that's why they sent that subpoena. They've done a lot of trips to the FBI, to the CIA to look at evidence, and now they're in the midst of collecting their own documents. Once they have seen all the evidence that they believe is available, then they'd like to move on to the next phase, which is interviewing people who are of importance to them. They had that meeting with the Deputy Attorney General because they want to make sure, as they conduct their own investigation side by side with the FBI's investigation, that these two investigations aren't stepping on each other, that they're trying to interview the same people at the same time, that kind of thing. And so while these two investigations have very distinct purposes, they do overlap, and they want to make sure that they don't interfere.
Deconfliction was the word that came out of it. And speaking of potential conflicts, a letter that a Washington law firm released on Friday stated that with few exceptions, the president's tax returns do not reflect income from Russian sources. Is that likely to satisfy questions that the Senate Intel Committee has about that relationship?
Not really, because this is a letter from Mr. Trump's attorney. It's not the same thing as seeing his actual tax returns, number one. Number two, that letter didn't cover any investments that Russian entities or Russian individuals may have made in Trump businesses. Did they provide loans, for example, for big projects that he was working on? Did they give money for those projects? Those are the kind of things that wouldn't be known via either a tax return or a summary of a tax return done by a lawyer. I should note, it's very possible that the Senate Intelligence Committee does somehow have access to his tax returns. Just because we haven't seen them doesn't mean that investigators haven't.
All right, Nancy Cordes for us in Washington. Nancy, thank you very much.